So, how does an organization go from a small, often persecuted faith to, well, the biggest superpower in all of Europe? It's an incredible story. Today, we're going to unpack how the medieval church, led by the Pope, built a massive empire of faith, wealth, and, you guessed it, power. Let's dig in.
Just take a look at this army. You've got knights, horses, banners, the whole shebang, all marching off to war. But here's the twist. This army wasn't called up by a king or some powerful emperor. Nope. It was called to fight by just one man, the Pope. How on earth does a religious leader get that kind of pull? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out.
All right, to really get how the church became this superpower, we have to look at the causes. And our story, believe it or not, starts in the ashes of the greatest empire the world had ever seen, Rome. Okay, first things first. Let's get one thing straight. When we say the church with a capital C, we are not just talking about that stone building on the corner. We mean the entire organization of Christianity. Think of it like a giant global company with branches absolutely everywhere. And who's the CEO of this whole operation? That would be this guy, the Pope. He's based in Rome, and he is the undisputed head of the Roman Catholic Church.
Now, if the Pope is the CEO, you can think of the bishops as his powerful regional managers. Each bishop was a major church leader in charge of a whole area, making sure the rules from headquarters were being followed.
You know, for centuries, Christians were actually persecuted. But then, in 313, everything changes. The Roman Emperor Constantine makes Christianity legal. And boom, just look at that growth. Less than 40 years later, over half the entire Roman Empire is Christian. But then comes the real turning point, 476. The Western Roman Empire collapses, and suddenly, Europe is thrown into chaos. There's no emperor, no government, just a huge power vacuum waiting to be filled.
So, with the Roman Empire gone, who was going to step up and lead? Well, the church was in the perfect position to step in. But it didn't do it alone. It got smart. It started making some very, very powerful friends.
What they worked out was basically a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of deal. See, all these local kings needed a way to prove they had a right to rule. So, the church would give them its official blessing, making them look like God's chosen leader. And in return, the kings protected the church, gave them tons of land, and helped convert all their people to Christianity. It was a total win-win.
And these deals had some huge payoffs. Get this. In 754, the king of the Franks just gave the Pope his very own country to rule, right in the middle of Italy. It was called the Papal States. This was a complete game changer. The Pope wasn't just some spiritual guide anymore. He was now a king with land, an army, and a kingdom of his own.
So now the Pope has land, money, and tons of influence. He was ready for his next big move. And this leads to a series of major events where the church basically decided it was time to show all the kings who was really in charge.
I want you to imagine you're a king for a second. For centuries, you've gotten to pick the bishops, those powerful regional managers in your own kingdom. Obviously, you pick your friends, people who are loyal to you. But then, a new pope, Gregory VII, comes along and just changes the rules. He says, actually, from now on, only I can appoint bishops, and all church officials have to be loyal to me first, not you. This was a massive power grab and a direct challenge to every single ruler in Europe.
You can bet the kings didn't take that sitting down. This challenge led to one of the most dramatic showdowns in all of medieval history, a head-to-head fight between Europe's most powerful emperor and the Pope.
I mean, this was it. This was the ultimate question. In a showdown between the spiritual leader of all Christians and a mighty emperor with a huge army, who's going to win? Who is the real boss?
Well, the Pope had a secret weapon, and it was way more powerful than any army. It was called excommunication. This meant you were officially kicked out of the church. For the average person, this was terrifying. It meant you were cut off from God and definitely going to hell. But for a king, oh, it was so much worse. It meant all of your subjects, all of your knights and lords, no longer had to obey you. It was the ultimate political knockout punch.
And boy, did the Pope use it. When the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV defied him, Pope Gregory excommunicated him, just like that. Henry's nobles immediately started plotting to get rid of him. In a total panic, the most powerful man in Europe traveled all the way to the Pope's castle and stood outside barefoot in the freezing snow for 3 days, just begging to be forgiven. An emperor begging a pope. The message to everyone was crystal clear. The Pope had won.
So, the Pope is officially more powerful than emperors. But what did all that power actually mean for regular people? What were the real consequences for the millions of people living their lives across Europe? First off, let's talk about money and land. By the end of the medieval period, the Church was the single largest landowner in Europe, period. It's estimated it owned about 1/3 of all the land. Just try to wrap your head around that. That's an unbelievable amount of wealth and economic power.
And the church's power touched every single part of your life. Spiritually, it was the only way to get to heaven. Your entire social life, from your baptism to your wedding to your funeral, it all happened at the church. You couldn't read the Bible yourself, so you had to rely on the priest to tell you what God wanted. Your local bishop might even be your landlord, with the power to take away your farm. And that threat of being kicked out, it kept everyone, from the poorest peasant to the richest king, right in line.
So there you have it. The church went from a persecuted faith to an international superpower. It commands the loyalty of kings, it controls incredible wealth, and in the minds of millions, it holds the keys to heaven and hell. Which leads to one final, huge question. With that kind of absolute power over kings and souls, what would the Pope do with it next? The answer to that was the Crusades.